All right, great. Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to our course on adding JavaScript
Hold on,
to,
Ian.
yeah,
Okay, no, you can go on.
sorry, what did you say? Okay. Hey,
You
everyone.
can,
Welcome
you
to
can
our
go on.
course
Sorry about that.
on, okay. Welcome to our course on adding JavaScript to HTML and some other things such as regular expressions and some other concepts that will be helpful when you're learning to code. Um, you can go to the next slide. We're going to be making like a very simple text editor demo app, and I'll be sharing it in this screen here. And the point of it is kind of to learn how to interact with the DOM, what ES6 is, how to use ES6 classes, how to use and create regular expressions, and other things that will be super helpful to learn. You can go to the next slide. Please ask questions because I don't know where you guys are with learning the code, and I can hopefully help clarify some things that you need. And then on the next slide, um, I have the link to the, could you switch the slide? I have the link to the GitHub repository where you can follow along. You can download it as GitHub, as like a Git repo, or like as a zip file if you don't know how to do that. Um, and yeah, let me know if you need any help following along. All right. So the first step is going to be making a basic app. So you can look over at my screen here. And right now I have a index.html, which is just like a very, very simple app. Let me know if this isn't clear to anyone. And then I have a basic JavaScript file. What I'm going to do is make this an npm repository. So that's what npm init does. And then I'm going to install a package. So an npm repository makes
Yeah, I think you can zoom in. You can zoom in on the screen. Yeah,
oh, zoom in.
yeah,
Um, I don't know, is this better?
yeah. This is much better.
All right, great. So what an npm repository does is it will kind of package it together. So if you wanted to publish it, it would be really easy to publish it. Or if you want to install things that other people have packaged up, in this case, like this browser sync thing that will allow us to run a command to run it in the browser. Um, so in the future, when you go get a job somewhere, you'll almost always be using npm packages, and it has all the defaults here. So I'll just click through it. Um, and then I also had a command there to install the browser sync thing, which ran already. And then what I'm going to do is here, it created a script section for us. Have you guys used JSON before? Um, created the script section, and then we'll put in this dev command. So now when we do npm run dev, after I save the file, it should run that command. And then I can open it up here. Oh, I have to switch the tab I'm sharing. I opened it up here and I have my simple obfuscator app. It doesn't do anything right now, but in the future, what we're going to do as like a simple practice is just being able to type in an email, and then when you go obfuscate, it hides the email. So you could share, like, remove your sensitive information. All right, I think you can go to the next slide now. All right. It's really hard to see the slides from here. I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, I already covered this part. You can run it now that we added the dev command by running npm run dev. So now adding JavaScript. So let's go to the JavaScript file. And right now we have this code that takes, and I know this is the first time you guys have used any DOM code, so I'll back it up a little bit. The DOM stands for Document Object Model, and it's like kind of a JavaScript representation of like the HTML file. So in this case, document.getElementById button will find the element because it has ID equals button on it. And then same thing for the input. And then I can do button.addEventListener. I can specify the listener name, in this case, click. It could also be like mouse over, or like key up, key down, submit for a form. And then I have an arrow function. Have you guys seen arrow functions before? Well, they are like a kind of just a simpler way to do the normal function sometimes. In this case, it accomplishes the exact same thing, but without saying function. And then inside of the function, I have what I want it to do when it's clicked. So now if I go over to here in my app, it should obfuscate. I mean, it should, when you click the button, it should say alert, but that doesn't work. So the reason why it doesn't work is because this code runs as soon as the app loads, but when the app has like just loaded, the DOM isn't ready yet. So we need to wait until everything has loaded and is in place. So just like we had button.addEventListener, we'll have window.addEventListener, and we can set it to load, and then I can have another arrow function here, or regular function, doesn't matter. And then I'm gonna put this, and I'll format it too so it looks nice. And there we go. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sharing that tab. Let me know if you can't see what I'm doing. But basically what I added was window.addEventListener around there. And then now it should work because it will wait to run this code until the app is loaded. So now I'll reload this, and I don't think it shows you on the screen, but it did say alert and hello world. And if you're following along, hopefully you got that too. Let me know if you didn't. All right. So now the next part of the same slide is we don't really
Yeah. So I think maybe you should if you can slow down a little, the most of the students are actually new to JavaScript, right? So I think
Yeah,
that would be helpful. Then you can also zoom in on the text editor and also your web browser so we can see it clearly. Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, better. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So, someone Icebergen said you didn't get it to say "Hello World." What? Could you tell me what happened?
Yeah, so I think you were asking if they understood what you did, but I guess he's trying to say he did not understand like what you did exactly.
Okay. Um. Oh, they said didn't see the pop up. Did you put the window.add event listener load around the code like this?
Oh yeah, so they did not see the pop-up on your screen. It seems like it's showing on a different screen and they can't see it.
Oh yeah. If you're talking about this where it pops up, that I can't fix that. It just doesn't show it, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's there. Um. All right. So I'll explain this one more time to make sure you guys have got it, and let me know if I need to slow down or anything. So here, what we are doing is we have window, and we add an event listener to wait for the window to load. And then in here, we have a function. This with the yeah. Can you see this screen? All right. Here we have the window, and it will add an event listener for when it loads, and then we'll have a function, but we can rewrite it with a equals and this greater than sign, so it's a little shorter. Either way works. And then inside
Yes.
we have the
Sorry, someone is asking if you can zoom in more. Sorry about that. If you can zoom in.
yeah, I did zoom in a little more, but uh okay,
Okay,
this is
more.
probably the
Yeah,
most I
much.
can go, but
Yeah,
is this good?
yeah. This is good. This is good. Thank you.
All right. So now we want to define const button. Did you guys learn const? Um, if you didn't, when you learn JavaScript variables, it's like um, there or let, but const doesn't. It stands for constant, and it like doesn't allow you to change stuff unless it's an object. And then yeah, we also defined the input as a get element by ID input, but we're not using that yet. And then we added an event listener to the button for when it clicks to have a pop-up saying hello world. And then if we go over to here, um, unfortunately I'm kind of limited in what I can show here, but it is saying hello world when it comes out of there. All right, let me know if you have any questions about that. I know it's like a lot at once. All right, so then you don't really want to be alerting the user like hello world. We want to be changing the value of the input. So here I'm going to go input.value equals hello world this time. And I'm going to save that. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to share that part again. But basically I changed, before I had alert hello world, this time I'm going to do input.value equals hello world. And now I'm going to save that and it should change the app. I go over here to the app, and I'm gonna press this, and it'll go to hello world. And if I had something in there already, it'll just be overwritten and say hello world. Does anyone have any questions about that? All right. Can we go to the next slide then? All right. So here we're going to, oh, could you go back to what is regex? All right. A regular expression, which is abbreviated as regex, you can see how to spell it on the screen, is a way to tell a computer what piece of text to look for. So in this case, maybe we want to find emails, and we could create a regular expression that looks for, something that has like any characters, an at symbol, and then any other characters dot, like any character, or like a .com or something. And we could use that one to like find information, like if you're looking through legal documents, or you're looking, like here we want to find emails within a text field. So it can be used to find stuff, and it can also be used to validate stuff a lot. So if you have a form and you have like a phone number field, an email field, and I don't know, maybe like a country field, you can use a regular expression to validate that the user put in something correctly and didn't make a typo or something. So now we just need a regular expression to find emails, and then we need to be able to input that regular expression into our app. So what we'll do, if you look at my code editor, is do something like input, instead of input.value equals hello world, we'll do something like input.value.replace, and then we'll figure out what goes in the dot replace in a minute. All right, could you switch to the next slide? And first of all, does anyone have any questions about regular expressions? All right. If you do, then just put it in the chat and I'll answer you. They are like, you won't use them like that much, but they are pretty important to understand, so that when you do need to use them, you'll know how to, and you won't have to find like some workarounds like I did when I first started learning. All right, so on this slide, we have a basic regular expression for email. I know it doesn't look basic. It's a pretty long string of like weird letters and numbers. And I can't teach you all of that in this course, but I'll break it down. And then if you'd like to learn more, I recommend the Code Academy course on regular expressions. It took me like an hour to go through, and it was pretty helpful. So first of all, in this regular expression, we have like brackets, and then we have A to Z lowercase, we have A to Z uppercase, and 0 to 9. So these are like ranges of like each character in the computer is assigned a number, and these are like ranges of those numbers basically. So in this case, it's all the lowercase letters, all the uppercase letters, and all the digits. And then the expression side of the brackets matches any characters that are like commonly allowed in email addresses. That's the plus sign, all lowercase letters, all uppercase letters, all numbers, and periods, underscores, and dashes. And then the brackets mean you match like a single of these characters. And then the plus sign means you can have unlimited amounts of the things in the bracket. But you need at least one. And then the @ sign in the middle of the regular expression literally means the @ sign. Then we have another bracket expression that's exactly the same as the first one because we're just matching all like the normal characters in emails. Actually, it's not exactly the same. It doesn't have a plus in it because you wouldn't have a plus in the domain name. And then you have a dot because the email addresses are something at something dot something. But a dot does mean something in regular expression language, so we need a backslash to escape the dot. And then we have finally another string of like most letters and stuff allowed. That would be like the .com part of like gmail.com. All right. Oh, someone asked, why did you add the window event listener? That's a great question. So basically, when I had it before, and I can demonstrate if you look at my tab, where I had it before, over here, it doesn't work when I don't have the window event listener. And that's because the code that I told it to run runs exactly, like it runs as soon as possible basically, and that's before. I know it's kind of hard to comprehend because it all happens very fast, but the code runs before the app is actually loaded. And so if we add a window.add event listener for load, then it will wait until everything is loaded. And so not all of the code, but most of the code that you'd run should probably wait until it's loaded. So you can usually wrap your code in that, but it is nice to have the option to run something as soon as possible, depending on what you're doing, like ads and stuff. All right. If that makes sense to you, we can go to the next slide. All right. So now that we have a regular expression for emails, we can add it to the like code that we've already written. And if you haven't seen string.replace in here, I'll put it in the chat. Oh, can they see the I guess they can't see the private chat, but maybe Amaka, you could put that in the public chat for me. So if you haven't seen this string.replace before, you can read about it with the MDN link. And then we want to replace all emails in the editor. So with the string.replace function, we first have some matcher, and then we have the what to be, I guess I'll call it the replacing string. So, and then, so basically there's three components. The string that will like be read and like replace stuff on will be in the first part, like behind dot replace. Then the first argument to replace will be a matcher. This could be a string or a regular expression. And then the second part will be a replacing string something that it gets replaced with. So in this case, we're going to have our email matcher, which we'll fill out in a second, and we'll replace it with like something that kind of looks like an email address, like that. And then for the matcher, we can put our regular expression in. What about if you want, someone asked, what if you want to show the client a specification about a product on your page? What do you mean by that? Like a thing that folds down? Could you elaborate on what you mean by that? All right. So here, I'm going to paste in the regular expression with one difference. And that difference is that it is now surrounded by these slashes. And at the end of the slashes is a G, and that G stands for global. So it'll match anything. If it was GI, that would mean it's also global and insensitive to the casing. And no one expects you to memorize all that. So if you, let me find the link, but there's a nice site you can go to if you ever need to make regular expressions. It's called regex101.com. And you might also be able to use ChatGPT as well. So with that, let's see if this works. I'm gonna go share this one now, and I'll put in my email. And then I'll click replace, and it will replace with that. And if anyone's following along and you did not get that, then let me know. But the pop-up that I showed during the Hello World, could it also work when building an e-commerce website? I would suggest not doing that. I would suggest only using that pop-up when you want to like very quickly implement a way to like show the user some error message or something, but I wouldn't use it to like tell them more about a product. But if you kind of want a pop-up window for that, first of all, I wouldn't really recommend a pop-up window to like show more about a product. It might be better to just have something that you click on, like click on show more or something. But if you did do a pop-up, then I would suggest looking up like pop-up JavaScript, and you should get some more info, or you could look up like pop-up JavaScript library and find something that might be better for what you're looking for. All right. And let me know if you have any other questions, and we can go to the next slide. All right, I'm gonna type in the like more information about the alert. Actually, never mind. All right. Now we're going to come to ES6 classes. This is also a pretty complex topic, so I'm not sure if I'm explaining it well, and let me know if you have any questions. So ES6 is like the newest, or like one of the newer versions of JavaScript. It includes many more advanced features like let, const, which I already showed, um, promises, new array methods, and classes. So classes are not any are kind of just a new way to write stuff. Um, yeah, technically anything you could do with classes you could have done before ES6, but they may be a more like clear and reusable way to write your code. So a class in programming defines a type of object. It's basically like a template for an object. For instance, you may want to represent a bunch of pets with JavaScript. You could create a class that says that all pets have or don't have certain features and make a sound, and then create dogs like cats and birds based off of that template. Um, that might be confusing, but I'll give you another example on the next slide. So MDN, which is the Mozilla Developer Network, which is a great place. It can be confusing when you're starting out, but it is a good place to learn JavaScript stuff and any web development stuff. So they give the example of a professor class, and this is pseudocode. It's not how you would actually write the code, but it's similar enough. So you have a professor, and it has properties like name, teaches, and it has a constructor, which is basically a function that's run when you create a new instance of the class. And then you have methods like grading a paper or introducing yourself. And the important thing here to notice is that we're not defining one professor. We're defining like a template for all the professors to use, so you could represent professors. And you can kind of, because the template, you can kind of like use things that are going to be important for all professors. For example, the introduce self function, it would just take your name and what you teach and like, use it to make an introduction message. So you kind of get that for each thing. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, here I'm describing you can create new instances of this class. Like I mentioned, you would do it like Walsh equals new professor, Walsh psychology. So you're passing the name and teaches to the constructor function. Each like professor follows the same template and can do the same things, but they are different people. And we can go to the next slide. So classes are a part of object-oriented programming. And object-oriented programming is a new way of programming that you haven't learned about yet. So it's kind of like a way to program where almost everything is a class or an object, and then you can create instances of that class. So if you were making a server, for example, you might have like different services on that server. Maybe they each have like a path, and then maybe you have one like class called like server service template or something, and then each service, like storage service, extends that class, and then you can go and implement like each service. I know this is pretty confusing, but basically you can break everything down into classes, and one class can be based on another class, and then every object you create is based on a class. And if you want to do it this way, which has benefits and trade-offs, in object-oriented programming, basically everything is a class, and everything is represented by like a class or an instance of a class. So there's two more concepts of object-oriented programming that we should talk about. Inheritance, which I kind of briefly mentioned, is where one class can be an extension of another class. So for example, professor could have been an extension of a class called person. And then we could create other classes that are extensions of person, like janitors and students. And then there's also encapsulation. So what if we want to like check if people satisfy certain requirements, like being 21 or older and having an ID card? We could check each person for the two requirements, but those requirements to like go somewhere might change. So we could have a single person that has access property, and then that's the only thing we need to change in the code if the requirements change. So you could do this instead of like checking each place in the code, 21 or older and has an ID card. And if you check every place in the code and you have to update something, you could be updating like thousands of lines of code. But if you just have it in the class itself, then you're only updating one line of code. So these are pretty difficult concepts to wrap your head around, or at least they were for me. So if you have any questions, or if you want me to explain the whole thing again in like a more clear way, let me know in the chat. Any questions at all? All right. So on this slide, more about object-oriented programming. There's a few links that maybe you could put in the chat or share later. And basically, like I only kind of skimmed the surface. I'm definitely not an expert on this stuff myself, but let me know if you have any questions and I'll do your best to answer you. And then the one thing I wanted to reiterate was that anything done with object-oriented programming can also be done with normal variables and functions. And classes are really just a better or syntax for making a specific kind of an object. So they're just templates, and for example, if you had a server with different services like storage, authentication, and stuff like that, you could have one service object and service class, and then the other things could be classes like based on the service class. So you can extend a class, and then you could, when you publish everything, you could be making like a new instance of a class. And that's like pretty hard to wrap your head around. So let me know if you have any questions. And if not, we'll go to the next slide. So this is rewriting your app, our app we made with object-oriented programming. So you can take a look at my code editor here. I'm going to comment this part out. I don't know if you guys learned JavaScript comments, but it's a slash and an asterisk, or 2 slashes. And then I have this editor class. I just copied and pasted this in here, and I'll go over it line by line, and then you can let me know if you have any questions. So here we have the constructor. So when we call a function that says new editor, It's the constructor that actually runs. And the constructor takes two arguments, the obfuscate button ID and the input ID. And then it defines like properties of itself. So it says that based on these two inputs, the editor button is going to change to be whatever element can be gotten by the obfuscate button ID. The editor input is going to change to the same thing for the input. It's also going to define the email regular expression. Since this is constant, we could probably put it somewhere else. Like we can put properties up here because we don't need to change the email regex based on whatever is provided there. And then we have an initialization function. This code could also just go up there, but sometimes it can be helpful to separate stuff. Either way is fine, but I can put it up there for simplicity. So basically, we're going to add an event listener to hide emails, and we'll do that when the constructor is called. And then we just have this hide emails method on the constructor. I mean, not on the constructor, on the object. And it's going to take the input dot value and set it to there. And then what we want to do on load, instead of running this, we're going to run make a new editor. So I'll switch over to this tab, and functionally it's the same thing that we had before. It does the same thing. It's really just a different way of writing code. And there could be some advantages to writing code this way. For example, let me see which slide it's on. I'll just do it on here. We could copy this, change the IDs, and then over here we could have email hider 2, and all we have to do is make a new line instead of writing all this code again. So in this case, it's button 2 input 2. And depending on how you're writing code, as like you make a much larger code base and get a lot more complicated, breaking things down into classes could be really helpful. Even if you end up using the other kind of programming, which is called functional programming, it's still nice to know what objects are and how you use them, so you can decide which to use and see like which one's right for you and be able to use both. So this is a pretty complicated subject. Let me know if you have any questions. And I would recommend like looking at some more resources about classes online, because it is like a hard subject to wrap your head around, but also feel free to ask me. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, so as I kind of mentioned, this does seem like a bit of overkill for what we're doing, unless we're having a second email hider, which we might. This could be, when you think about it, kind of like an editor that you have anywhere someone edits text on your website. For example, in Twitter, you would have an editor in like a pop-up window, maybe one on like a new page. You have like a miniature one in the replies. So you might have like multiple of these. If you just have one, it does seem like a bit of overkill, but depending on what we're doing, it might be good for keeping code organized or for reusing it. And just to see a little more of some of the class's features, on the next slide, well, this slide, I did it already. I made a new obfuscator section and then put in another editor, and you can just make two editors. So I did that already. But the thing I didn't do here is have a method where you can get um, get text. And what we're doing here is having something that looks like a variable or like a part of the, like a variable. So you would access it as email header.text. But instead of just having a value, you access it the same as if you were like doing editor.button or something. But instead, you are like running a function, and then whatever the function returns will be the thing given. So in this case, we're going to return this .input.value, and this should work. Let me try it. If we console.log email header 2 text, and I write some stuff in here, and then reload. It actually won't work right now, but and you also can't see the console, but you kind of get the point. There's a text property, and right now it'll just be blank, but if there was something in there when we logged it, it would not be blank. All right, I think we can go to the next slide now. All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about ES6 tooling. So ES6 and above isn't supported by every platform. In this case, we were able to just type in ES6 features like classes in this tutorial because modern browsers natively support features like ES6, but still about 4% of users don't have full ES6 support. And there are also newer features like class decorators, which I don't expect you to know yet, that don't have support in any browser or Node.js yet, but we can still use them. So what we do is we use compilers to convert JavaScript into to convert like new JavaScript into older JavaScript. The most popular one is Babel. And if you choose to use TypeScript, which has a lot of advantages over the long term, it will also do the compiling for you. We won't use these today, but there's lots of tutorials online, and you should keep them in mind when you do a project. All right, and that's it for today. I know there's a lot here, so if there's a part you want me to completely go over again, try to make it more clear, I'd be happy to do that for you. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, guys. If you have any question, you can drop a question in the chat so that Ian can, answer your question. Okay. So for those of us watching from Twitch and YouTube, if you have any question, please go ahead and drop it in the chat. The resources for the class will be shared with you, of course, and your attendance form has been shared as well. I think that is the last message you have in the chat. Okay. So if you have any questions within the next 2 minutes, just drop it in the chat so that we can answer that question.
Yeah, I know I went over like a lot of things pretty quickly, so I mean, hopefully you got it all. But if there's any part, like I'm happy to go over like a whole section or a whole slide um, again and make sure you understand it. But if not, then that's all for today, and feel free to ask any questions in the Discord if you have them.
Yeah, yeah. So you can always bring your question to the Discord server, and yeah, please, I would like you guys to also follow here on Twitter. You can check the handle; it's just right at the bottom of the stream. Here and the dev, right? So please,
Yeah,
yeah, please follow Ian on Twitter. That would be great. And of course, Ian, thanks a lot for showing up today. I mean, this is a very wonderful session, and I learned a lot. All right, thank you.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on, and sorry about the technical difficulties we had.
All right, thank you. Amaka, over to you, please.
All right. So thank you, Anne. That was fine. So all right, guys. I think that's all for tonight. So or good or whatever time of the day it is. So bye everyone. Thank you so much, Ian. Once again.
All right, bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye.